Okay, I'm in the Gospel of John, chapter 16. I'll be between verses 1 and 3 in this message. And in this message, I'm going to be talking about what Jesus tells the disciples about the change in relationship that will be happening between the disciples and the people who are a part of their world. Beginning in verse 1, this is John chapter 16, verse 1, Jesus said, "These things I have spoken to you, that you should not be made to stumble." In verse 2, "They will put you out of the synagogues. Yes, the time is coming that whoever kills you will think that he offers God service. And these things they will do to you because they have not known the Father, nor me." All right? I'm going to spend some time talking about verse 1 right away. "These things I have spoken to you, that you should not be made to stumble." What he's saying is that he has some things to say to the disciples so that they're not confused. Because life is about to change for the disciples. And it's not going to be what they thought that it was going to be. When they first began following Jesus, they could see that he was the Messiah. And there was the belief that the Messiah was going to establish the Messianic kingdom. Now, Jesus could have done that if the people would have received him, but they didn't receive him in the way that would be necessary for him to be successful with that, and so he's going to do it differently. But the disciples, they believed that there would be a Messianic kingdom and all that would go along with it, especially to be able to live in peace with one another, all right? That there would be a king who would assert authority over the land, over the people, in a way that people would be able to live in peace, at least greater peace than what they were expecting. And that there wouldn't be so much confusion about who their God is, because the Messiah would make that quite clear. Now, what's going to happen is different from what the disciples were expecting. Jesus is going to be crucified. He's going to resurrect from the dead, and he's going to invoke a new covenant, and he's going to dwell within them through the Holy Spirit. There's going to be a significant change in the relationship between Jesus and the people, between the living God and the people. There's going to be a change, but it's not going to be what they expected. And so they're going to have to adjust to the new experience that is about to unfold. And what Jesus has been expressing to them at the end of chapter 15, which I explained in the previous message, what he's explaining to them is that, people are not going to like you, all right? I mean, they're going to hate you. And this is probably not what you expected, not what you signed up for, but this is going to be a consequence, and he doesn't want them to stumble in the sense that he doesn't want them to be confused about what they're about to face. And to adjust, to adapt, and to realize that this is a way of life, but by Jesus explaining to them what will be happening in the future, what their lives are quite likely going to look like in the future, by him explaining this to them, it will be easier for them to embrace the new life that they're about to be faced with, because they can remember that Jesus told them about this, that there's no uncertainty in that sense, that at least Jesus made this known. Even though they may not have understood, they may not have believed, there will be enough conveyed to describe the new life that they're going to be faced with, that they should be able to adjust to what this really is. All right? Now, there are similar issues in our modern age, in the age that we are alive today. Similar issues when people become Christians is that they'll often make assumptions about what the Christian life is, and then they find out that it just isn't that way. They may embrace Christianity because they want to be accepted by a church of people, a group of people, a community, only to discover that, well, it's not going to be as good as they thought it was going to be. And so they have to make a new decision. Are they just going to abandon the faith entirely? And a lot of people do. A lot of people just abandoned it entirely because they signed up for with the expectation that they would have a role in the lives of other people and other people would have this role in their lives. That's what they signed up for. And so they have to recognize, well, this is not quite the way that I thought it would be, and so what do I do now? And the hope is that there will be some people, at least, and there usually is, some people, there's a few people, who will just simply acknowledge that things are a little different than what they thought they signed up for, but they recognize that there is some truth to be found there, that there is some truth in Jesus, there is some truth in the living God and in the Bible, and because of that, because this is important to them, the truth is important, and knowing the living God is important, they'll move forward in that regard. They'll continue to move in that direction. So as long as some people embrace that and go in that direction, that's better than having no one moving in that direction. All right, but this is common. This is not an unusual experience for people who are alive and who are a part of our world right now. These are experiences that people are going to have 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now. There will be people who will enter into the Christian world to some degree, and these are struggles that a lot of them will have. So in John chapter 16, verse 1, Jesus is making it clear that, look, I'm saying these things to you so that you do not stumble, so that, in effect, so that you're not confused, you're not disoriented to the extent where you're not going to continue in the faith, but that you may be instead encouraged to some degree to continue to pursue this. All right. Now, something that I've not yet mentioned that I really should mention is that there are a lot of struggles that the religious people have. There are a lot of issues related to pride, manifestations of sin through the religious pride. There are a lot of struggles with regards to how people will relate to others in an inappropriate way. But what I want to remind you of is that these are things that most all of us deal with in one way or another. I mean, we all have our struggles. We all have our personal issues, and the way that we relate to people can certainly be adjusted in a positive way. We all have issues like that can be addressed. And so as I speak about these things, there are some things that you might be able to reflect on within yourself, or at a later date you may see that these are issues that you have in terms of how you tend to relate to other people. And to be aware of it is a wonderful thing. Don't be discouraged by it or be embarrassed by it per se, but embrace it and say, yes, this is part of what I deal with as I relate to other people. To recognize that, to acknowledge that, and then consider making some different choices. You can do that, or you can wait until the Lord makes changes in your heart so that it's much easier for you to say no to the temptations of being mean to other people, as I'm describing in these messages. And to just keep that in mind, that it's not just about us against them per se. All right? It really is us against us and them against them, and everybody's against each other. We all have our own unique struggles behind these transitions that we experience in our lives. Now, in the previous message, I explained that the tribulations that Jesus encountered from other people, the struggles, the issues that he experienced himself, had a lot to do with the way that the religious leadership related to him, and that they were concerned about three particular topics that I explained in the previous message. The first topic has to do with their concern that they would lose their job, that they would lose their place. Now, this could be done because the Roman leadership decide to remove them. That could happen. But this could also happen because if the people believe Jesus, if they follow Jesus in the way that Jesus was describing, and throughout his ministry, he was teaching the law. He was saying, look, you people need to obey the law. And in addition to that, your righteousness needs to exceed that of the scribes and of the Pharisees. So if they were to move in that direction of being more devoted to the law than the scribes and the Pharisees were, if they could do that to the satisfaction that Jesus was describing, then they would be separating themselves from the leadership, from the Pharisees, from the Sadducees, whatever that might look like. Whereas they might abandon some things, they might embrace some new things. Whatever that would look like, there would be a disconnect such that the leaders would no longer have so many followers. All right? And that's an issue of job security as well. So not only did they have to deal with the risk that the Romans might, they might very well just remove them. That certainly is a legitimate risk, that they might just replace them and say somebody else is going to take your position. But if they don't have enough followers, all right, the adequate number of followers, well, then they're not leaders. All right, I mean, that's how it goes. If you can try to conceive of the last church that you were a part of, or one that you visited at some time, or maybe just go and see one for the first time, and you examine the leader who is there, whatever they call themselves, a pastor or priest or minister, whatever they want to call themselves, whoever this person is, what would happen if the next week or the next scheduled meeting, what would happen if nobody showed up? What would happen? Do they really have to be there? Are they obligated to be there? Are they paid to be there? That's what I mean. What would happen if they just decided to stay home, or go somewhere else? Is that person a pastor anymore? Are they a leader anymore? Who are they? What are they? I mean, they're just there by themselves, or maybe with 2 or 3 other people who are part of the staff kind of thing. Okay, and so the only reason why they're a leader is because they have people who are following them. That's how it goes. There's nothing evil about being a leader in the sense that you're contributing to the lives of others, hopefully, to some degree. And there's no requirement that a person may, follow someone forever. Just long enough until they're ready to move on to someone from whom they will learn more from. Things like that. It's reasonable to make decisions like that. So if more of the people would begin to follow Jesus, well, they're not going to be following these other leaders, and that's an issue of job security, all right? And that's a tremendous risk. So this was part of what Jesus was dealing with. They were concerned about the political risk, that if Jesus is welcomed and asserted as the King of Israel, the Romans might decide to just come in, wage war, and redefine the entire community, the entire nation, and say, you know what, from now on, you are all Romans, and you're no longer Jews, and we will outlaw Judaism even, or we'll just deport everybody like happened before. I mean, there's lots of ways that the Romans could approach that kind of a scenario. And so there was great risk. The people were concerned about that risk. They felt that Jesus was putting them at risk in this regard. But it wasn't just about their nation as a national identity. It was also about the community security, all right? That they may have a breakup of the community even internally. That the nation may begin to dissolve in a sense that, well, what would happen if most of the people decided to live by the new covenant and not by the old? They're going to say, look, the purpose of the law has been accomplished. It's been fulfilled. Now we have a new way of life. Before, it was repent and obey so you can be blessed by God. Now it is be blessed by God so that you can walk on the newness of life according to the inheritance we have in Christ. You get people to start to live that way, and your whole entire community will begin to dissolve. All right? If people pursue that out of sincerity. And so the religious leadership perceived that as being tremendous risk. And the other people would see that as tremendous risk, even though they're not part of the leadership. All right? They would see that as risk because they depend on their community for other things. Similar things, but still just, a little bit different. The religious leaders were looking at this as an opportunity to be the saviors of the people. Now we have an enemy. Jesus is the enemy. He is putting all the people at risk. He is a threat to all of you people, but don't worry. We will be the savior. We will take care of him. We'll murder him if necessary, in order to be the saviors of the people. All right? Now, this these three items, they will show up, okay? They will show up in other places and in other ways. But the root issues that people deal with on a personal level are still the same, right? And that's the point, is that they are still the same root issues, same problems that we deal with internally with ourselves, but they get manifested in different kinds of ways depending upon our placement or our role in our communities. Jesus is going to speak about the synagogues and about the disciples having experiences in the synagogues. Now, at this time, there was already a proclamation made by the leadership in Jerusalem that stated that if anybody was to believe in Jesus, then they were to be kicked out of the synagogue. All right? There could very well have been many synagogues that decided not to bother with that, not to comply with that. But there would be others who would already comply with that. The leaders of those synagogues, while they're not part of the temple leadership necessarily, the leaders of those synagogues, they would be motivated to remove anybody who believes in Jesus for similar reasons. Not necessarily the same, but for similar reasons. They may very well want to hold on to the leadership's approval. All right, they may want to hold on to the approval of the leadership in the temple. And so they will comply with what the leadership in the temple, with the Sanhedrin, declares. They will comply just because they want the approval of those leaders. Whether they have any personal convictions about Jesus or not, just doesn't matter. Whether Jesus is the Messiah or not doesn't really have any relevance. If Jesus is telling the truth or not, it doesn't really matter. If people are saying that they believe in him, that they follow him, and the leadership in Jerusalem says these people are not to be a part of your synagogue, the leaders will just comply just so that they can have the approval of the leadership in the temple. It could just be as simple as that. But they could also be concerned about their job security as well, because the people who believe in Jesus will know their God better, a lot better than those people who are leaders. And eventually the people might see that, and they might ask the disciples of Jesus to be the leaders in the synagogue from now on. What are you going to do then, right? That is an issue. How do you adjust to that? How do you adapt to that? Well, you're going to lose your place. You're going to lose your job. This can be a real problem. I did this once. I infiltrated a Messianic congregation, and after several months, I think it was 4 to 6 months, something like that, about 6 months, just by me present, by me being present, by me having conversations with a few people. Now, I did not ask for this, and I did not expect that this would happen, but they eventually wanted me to take the leadership position in the synagogue, and I did. I did for a while. And then eventually, at a certain point, due to changes in my life and changes that I could see happening in the synagogue, I went ahead and resigned and just went on my way and did other things. So, this can be a real concern that people have. All right. Now, there are other issues that the disciples could run into, and it all has to do with why are these people there? And there are so many different reasons that at that point you really have to take these circumstances on an individual basis. Okay, so that's kind of my overall summary of this. Let me go into this with a little bit more detail. In verse 1 again, John chapter 16, verse 1, Jesus said, "These things I have spoken to you, that you should not be made to stumble. They will put you out of the synagogues. Yes, the time is coming that whoever kills you will think that he offers God a service. And these things they will do to you because they have not known the Father nor me." I'm going to start with that. I'm going to start with verse 3 and then go back to verse 2. Because they have not known the Father and they have not known me. All right, now another way of saying this is that, look, these people don't know the true and living God, and they don't know the Messiah. All right? I mean, they wouldn't know the Messiah if he showed up. They wouldn't even know him. That's not unusual. If you were to ask the common Jewish person today, if the Messiah showed up, how would you know? How would you know? He wasn't a pretend Messiah, pretending to be so. What would be the qualifications? What have the prophets had to say about the Messiah? All that they have had to say. How would you know if he came? Just by asking that question, you can provoke the thought in a person's mind that maybe they ought to even look into it. That's what I did. I looked into it, and I discovered the only person who could possibly qualify for all that the prophets have said was Jesus. So, there you go. That's a no-brainer kind of a decision. Just doesn't require a lot of intelligence to figure that out. Just look at the facts. There it is, and it's obvious. All right, but that's because I decided to look into it. Most just won't even go there. They just make a decision. No, I won't look into it. I don't want to know. Don't ask, don't tell. Just don't go there because I'm worried about all these other consequences that will unfold. My family will totally reject me. I'll lose my inheritance. Look, I'll tell you, I lost my entire family. I lost my entire inheritance. So what? Big deal. Build your own family. Build your own retirement, your own inheritance, whatever. Just get on with your life. I've been doing this for a long time. I'll tell you, absolutely, it's worth it. So be it. If people want to be evil, let them be evil. If your family wants to be evil, so be it. It's better for you to pursue that which is true. So, when it comes to these issues, do they even know their God? And Jesus said, they don't even know their God, and they don't know their Messiah. They wouldn't know him if he showed up. He did show up, and they didn't know him. Most. Some did, but my point is that if a person claims to be religious, of whatever category of religion it may be, whether it be Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Catholicism, Unitarian, whatever, no matter what it is, just because they claim to be a member of that kind of a community, or they are, in a leadership position in that kind of a community, and they assert a lot of different opinions and beliefs and stuff, that doesn't mean that they know their own God, whether it's the true God or not. Most people are a part of these communities for reasons other than that. All right? They're there for other reasons. You could look at that from the point of view of the religious leaders in Jerusalem that Jesus was referring to. Why were they there? Well, they were there because it was a good job. They were there because they were part of the political system. All right? They were there because they could maybe be seen as saviors of the people. All right? Were they there because they wanted to know their God? Maybe some of them were. All right? We don't know. We don't have enough information. I would suggest that I would be surprised if there weren't a few, but that certainly doesn't mean all. All right? And so Jesus says here in verse 3, they don't know their God. They have not known him, and they have not known their Messiah. All right? So this is the first thing that I want you to think about. Just because a person says that they believe in God, that they know God, that they're religious in some way, that doesn't mean that they really know their God. All right? And what I mean by that is that doesn't mean they know their God in the sense that the God who that system of whatever proclaims is not even necessarily the real God. It's just one that somebody invented, somebody imagined, somebody would like to have. All right? But of those who may pursue those who may pursue the person who is the real living God, they still may not even know him either. All right? They may know a little bit about him, but not that much. And it may look like they know so little that it is as if they don't know him at all. All right? And this is a way of recognizing that you're dealing with a person who doesn't know their God. All right? It's a person who hates you, who wants to kill you. All right? Or, if they can't kill you, they can't murder you, they just want to get rid of you, for example. That could be an indication that they just don't know their God. Not necessarily, all right? Don't get me wrong. There may be wonderful opportunities to have somebody legitimately removed from a congregation or from your life, all right? And you may know your God just fine. It's just that those are decisions that have to be made for other reasons. But Jesus is telling the disciples, look, you have come to know your God and the true Messiah, the true God and the true Messiah to a certain extent. But when you go into the communities, when things change because Jesus is not around anymore, when you guys go back into the world, into the communities of the people, don't be so confused about people rejecting you or wanting to get rid of you. Don't be confused about that. Don't be disoriented about that. Understand that this is going to take place. All right? And the core reason behind, as I've explained in the previous messages, has to do with the fact that you believe the truth, and the truth will tend to expose the lies. All right? You will expose the dishonesty. You will expose the dishonesty, the deceptions, the manipulations. All right? You will expose these things eventually, by default. It's just going to happen. Even if you just don't conform, you don't comply, you by default expose things that are just simply not real or not based on reality or are dishonest. All right? I mean, that's the way that people are, okay? And you need to understand this and not be confused about this and to see that this can be an indication that these people just do not know their God. They just don't. Now, Jesus has already been conducting his ministry there in the land of Israel for a few years, right? So you would think that the people who are local there by now will have made a decision about what they're going to think about him. Okay, and so that's the current state of affairs at this time in the ministry of Jesus and at this time in history that's described here in John chapter 16. But it's the same thing today, all right? It's the same thing today. There are lots of people who will say, we believe in Jesus. We believe in the God of the Bible. Well, you know what? They really may not. They may not, and they probably don't even know any better. They probably don't even know that they don't know. Again, they don't know that they don't know. They don't even see that. And so if you enter into the presence today, if you enter the presence of these kinds of people and these kinds of congregations, don't be confused about the kinds of reactions that you get when people relate to you in similar ways. Okay, you could very well be threatening somebody's job security. You could be threatening somebody's community. They may see you as an opportunity to be the savior of the congregation because you have entered into their presence and, oh no, we figured out that you're kind of, corrupted. You're apostate kind of thing. And so, here's a wonderful opportunity for them to really show just how important and how powerful and how wonderful they are to the community because they are going to see you as the enemy and they will wage war upon you. They will conquer you. They will kick you out. They will run you out, whatever. All right? And this is real. This goes on all the time. Okay, and so if you find yourself in today's world experiencing the same kinds of issues, you may even encounter people who are just simply so inherently violent amongst their own being that they want to murder you, People like this are usually looking for religion as an excuse to commit murder. They're normally people who would commit murder anyway if they could get away with it, and they're just looking for some kind of religious excuse. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have true convictions about their God. Doesn't necessarily mean. There are people who do, They have true convictions about their God, that they believe that they will be blessed and they will be honored and they will be rewarded if they murder you. There are some people who are like that. Others use it as an excuse because they want to commit murder anyway, and they feel like they have an excuse to be able to do it, that some people will respect and they won't be punished for doing so. Instead, they will be rewarded. Okay? You could look at that from the point of view of some of the religious wars that have happened in history. There have been times like that in the past. If there are times like that in the near future, don't be so surprised. It's happened before. All right? So this is what's going on. In verse 3 again, and these things they will do to you because they have not known the Father nor me. They will do these things to you. Now, it's also important to remember that part of our lives are to be spent or devoted to reaching out to others with the truth of God. All right? Part of our lives are to be spent that way. We're part of the work of God. And so, for us to do this is good and in many ways can be expected. You may very well feel motivated to do that just because that's the work that God does within you. He does a work within you, and you want others to experience a similar work. You want others to know their God. You want them to experience peace and joy in their life just as you have. But either way, you're going to go out, and in order for a person to know their God, all right, in a similar way that you do, they have to be a person who does not. You're going to have to go and talk to the unbelievers. Or you're going to have to talk to those who think they are believers but are not. All right? You're going to have to go out and be a part of the lives of these people. And don't be confused about this, all right? Those are the people who need to be saved. Those are the people who need to know their God. It is a good thing for us to go and interact with these people, maybe even join their communities, be a part of their lives. And in doing that, you will perhaps discover a few people who you can speak with, relate with, and you may be able to contribute to their faith in small ways, which is good. And when you do that, you need to do so with an open mind, all right, and with a sober mind, staying focused on the sober-minded reality that you are going to cause disruptions in people's lives, and, they may throw you out. Some people may decide to tell you, you're no longer welcome here, kind of thing. They may look for ways to cause you harm. All right? It's unlikely in our present age right now that you have to worry about somebody murdering you, but you never know. There may be an occasion in the future where the world will change and we'll have some of that going on. Hopefully that won't last long. But these are the people who we are to go and reach out to. All right? And so the solution is not to just isolate yourself and never be a part of anybody's life. That's not the solution. That's not what God has in mind. He wants us to interact with people of the world. All right? But it can be helpful to know that you're not likely going to be very welcomed by them. It can be helpful to know in advance that they're not going to like you so much. All right? If you want to be loved by somebody, you're going to have to find someone who is loved by God. You really are, because that's the only kind of person who's going to have any love to share with you. All right? That's something that Jesus related back in chapter 15. In chapter 15, in verse 17, John chapter 15, verse 17, these things I command you, that you love one another, which was repetition from him saying this before. And another way to perceive this is to say that you love one another because, of course, no one else will. No one else is going to do that. So you may find people who already know your God, who know the Lord in a similar way that you do, or close enough, that you can forge a bond with them. You can develop a quality relationship with them, one that you don't have to be so careful with. Everybody else, you have to have some understanding. You have to have some reservations. You have to be relatively careful and realize that this is a person who you'd like to reach out to, who you'd like to know their God. But if they don't, there could be some risks, and to just simply be aware of that. All right? If you don't find a lot of people who share a common faith with you, that you just keep going out and meeting new people who may be receptive to the faith that you have. Now, there's great risk if you find enough people who do, then you might just find yourselves isolating yourselves, and now you've got your church, and there's enough people that you feel comfortable with, and then you're stuck, and you never go out and reach out to new people, and this is a problem, all right? And this is one of the reasons why I don't really like to encourage people trying to form churches of any large size necessarily. I have a concern about that because it's too easy for people to then just isolate themselves from everyone. And then who's going to tell other people about the gospel? Who's going to tell other people about our inheritance in Christ? Right? You're going to miss out on a whole lot of new opportunities. And I've watched this happen. This is a real kind of problem that can take place. Okay? And this is not healthy. This is not what our God wants us to do, from what I can tell. All right, so let's go back up to verse 2. In verse 2, John chapter 16, verse 2, they will put you out of the synagogues. Yes, the time is coming that whoever kills you will think that he offers God a service. And I explained that the reason why they're going to do that is because they don't know their God. And in effect, what they're doing is they're in a sense, they are rejecting. All right, they are rejecting what it is that you are presenting by having you removed. Okay, now let me tell you a little bit about what motivates people. Okay, a little bit about what motivates a lot of people, and that is the appeal of religious pride. Okay, now pride in and of itself is not necessarily an evil thing. All right. I mean, if you do something useful, if you do something that is good, and you can feel good about yourself because you did something that's good. All right. You can build a sense of pride from that. There's nothing evil about that. You're proud of what you have done, kind of thing. That's just fine. If you interact with another person and you contribute to their lives, you engage in some kind of a mutual exchange of some kind, that you produce something and you give it to them in exchange for something that they have produced and they give it to you, you can esteem a sense of pride from that. And I don't think that is unhealthy at all. That's a good sense of pride, all right? But there are other forms of pride that are extraordinarily destructive. And that's the sin that is usually referred to when the word pride is often used in the scriptures as a problem. And this has to do with what's best understood as religious pride. And religious pride has to do with making someone else look bad so that you will look good. That's kind of how it plays out. All right? And religion, if I will define what I mean by that word, the word means a system of bondage, okay? It means that it is a system of law. It is a set of rules of right and wrong and good and evil by which people decide to live. And you can embrace the law that God gave, or you can make up your own, or you can take a percentage of laws from the Bible and a percentage of laws from somewhere else, and you can throw in a few of your own or change some. Whatever you end up doing, you will define a system of law, a system of good and evil by which you live. All right. Now, of course, it's important for us to know what is good and what is evil. We should know that, all right? And our God has given us a wonderful description in the law with regards to what good and evil is. And I consider that to be the milk of the Scriptures, as the writer to the Hebrews said, that the milk of the Scriptures has to do with understanding the differences between good and evil, all right? But the meat of the Scriptures has to do with something else. It has to do with understanding the new covenant and the new life that we have in Christ Jesus, freedom from the law, all right? But everybody in their own way, they have their definition of what is good and evil, no matter who they are, all right? And I, of course, encourage people to review the definition that God has given, and so that at least your definition conforms to what it is that he thinks, because what he thinks is important, right? But even if a person does not acknowledge the existence of a God, everyone kind of has their own idea concerning what their system of law is. And so what that means is that everyone is religious. Okay? Everyone is religious in their own ways. It's just that some people are so open-ended with their religion that they can't really fit it into a certain category, or maybe they just decide that there's no God, and so we don't call it religion. But no, when I use this definition of this is the system of life through which we live, that we define right and wrong, good and evil, all right, that becomes a religion, a system of bondage. And it's usually something that somebody imposes upon themselves, all right? But it turns out that people want to impose this on others also. Now, those who believe in God will, easily try to impose their beliefs on other people, but there's usually some kind of respect that is expressed, in the sense of, well, look, I want you to believe in my religion, I want you to believe in my God, because I want you to go to heaven, kind of thing. But if you don't, I'm not going to intentionally try to find ways to cause harm to you, all right? But those who do not believe in God, they will often be quite aggressive about what they believe is right and wrong. And if you don't conform, because they don't have a God who they can refer to and say, well, he'll deal with these issues, they will assume for themselves that they are going to be God in this scenario, and they are going to punish you for not conforming to their beliefs. All right? And so these are the kinds of religious people, those who don't acknowledge the existence of a God. These are the kinds of religious people who can be a lot more destructive in other people's lives than those who do believe that there's a God. I'm just giving you a general description about the world that you are a part of, all right, so that you're not so confused when you encounter people like this. But those who are not classified as being religious and yet are religious according to the definition I just gave, okay, how do you spot these people? How do you identify these people? It's really not that hard. You just need to wait long enough, and eventually they're going to say something that sounds like this. That's just wrong. As soon as they say that, you know that they have just declared something that is evil, all right? Something that could be good, something that is evil. They will let you know, what they think good and evil should be. And these are people, or you will find people who will talk about other people a lot, and say all these negative things about other people. They usually don't have anything good to say, but they talk about all the other people, either in their lives or in the news or in the magazines or whatever. They talk about these people and they say, that person is, what they're doing is wrong. Oh, that person is not right. They're not good. Oh, that's just evil. This is bad. And they just talk about these people and keep talking about them and keep talking about these problems and these issues in the world. Those terrible people in that country over there, they're doing these things. And that terrible leader over there, he's doing these kinds of things. What are they doing? They're expressing their religion. All right? That's what they're doing. They are describing their religion. Now listen, this is the point behind this. All right? And that is that religion is of no value. It's totally useless. Unless You have someone to compare yourself with. That's when it becomes useful. I mean, you can have a system of law, but if you can't compare yourself with somebody else, well, what good is it? It just isn't much good. I mean, so it gives you some guidelines about how you're going to make your decisions in life. But eventually you're going to compare yourself with somebody else who does not meet those standards. And when you do, that is where the religious pride gets developed. Okay, that's where the pride comes in, where you have someone who you can compare yourself with and you can say, they are not like me. They're not like me. They are evil. And so by default, I am good. I am important. I am of value. And that's what these people are doing. Right? So don't be so confused about why such religious people, even though they may say there is no God, why these religious people are so negative, and why they're so condemning over other people, is because of their desperation to try to assert some sense of value in their lives, some sense of purpose in their lives. These are people who really need to know their God, and so if you can get past that well enough that you can continue to have conversations with them, there may be opportunities through the relationship that you have with them in a limited sense. There may be opportunities for you to encourage them, to inspire them, to pursue fulfillment for these deep-rooted needs that they have in the real God who is there to provide them with what they genuinely need in the deepest part of their being, in the deepest part of their heart. All right? So people will express their religion towards you. They will do that. And they will find other people who they can join up with. Some people, they embrace these religions just because they want to be a part of a tribe. They want to be a part of a team. They want to be a part of a community. They don't really have any real convictions about these beliefs, but they say they do, just so they can be a part of some group of people. And they don't care if it's true or not, or if they're being dishonest or not, because their objectives are to have business contacts. Their objectives is to have to do with being a part of a community of other people, so that they could be a part of a place where their kids can have something to do. Maybe they're looking for a spouse. There's lots of different reasons why people are a part of these religious groups, And so people will, join these teams, whether they are groups or teams that believe in a God or reject the existence of a God. They're joining these teams because of the inner struggle that people have, because of the emptiness that they have, because they do not know their God. All right? And you will encounter people who are looking for people to hate. They're looking for people to despise. And when they see you coming, if they're in the non-religious category, you're a target. You have to be a little bit careful and a little bit sensitive about how you relate to these people. And yet these are people who we are to go to relate with and to speak with, to try to find a few who may be saved. A few people who we can be a part of their lives. If anything, just to wait until they have such a significant disruption in their own life that when they redefine what their new life is going to look like, maybe they'll include a little Jesus there then. And they will know who to talk to, who to talk with, because they already know that you're a person who believes in these kinds of things. These are examples concerning the opportunities that you might have. Okay, now this shows up in other kinds of ways. I can explain something from my own personal testimony with regards to my own life and the experiences that I've had with other people. Now, I have, of course, experienced a lot of wonderful, profound successes and great things in my life. But I've also had just about an equal amount of failures, either because of my bad decisions or because of the bad decisions of other people that I just got caught up in. I've had a lot of low points in my life, And I've had a lot of really good high points in my life. And in the years to come, as I may still be alive in this world, I expect that there will be some new, really low points in my life up and coming. And there'll be some new, really good moments, of great success and great experiences up and coming. Now, during those low points in my life experience, I have found that I've attracted a lot of new friends, and it turns out that in many cases, a lot of these new friends, they come into my life because they see that my life is just so destructive, or it's been so destroyed, or things are just absolutely catastrophic, that they like to be around me, They like to have me in their life to some degree because they can say, well, these issues that Aaron is dealing with, at least I don't have to deal with those issues, And he is, so I'll be his mentor maybe, or I'll be in his life a little bit. But what they're really doing is they're using me. They're using me as a way to build up some sense of personal pride within themselves, because they can compare themselves with how awful my life is and how deeply problematic my circumstances are. And they enjoy that. They do. Until I recover, until things start getting better, until I overcome those obstacles and those struggles. And my life is so much better than it was before I even had those struggles. Well, then these friends, they get really irritated. They get really disturbed. They get mean. They get cruel, and sometimes they can be exceptionally destructive in my life because they actually want to hurt me. They liked me when I was having problems. Now I don't have any. So in some ways they feel like, well, it's my responsibility. It's my obligation to society or maybe even to God to give him some new ones. That I'm going to cause him some pain and suffering in his life since nobody else is right now. And I have had people like that in my life. And I hope I don't have any more, but I probably will. I'll have a few more. I might. Who will relate to me that way. All right? And so don't be so confused, Don't be so disoriented by circumstances like this as you have relationships with other people, because for other people, the priority for them, is about how do they build or sustain their personal pride, their religious pride, whether they believe in a God or they don't believe in a God. However that is, people need you in their life to cause harm to, or to compare themselves with, or to reject. They need you, all right, so that they can feel good about themselves. And these are the people who God sends us to. All right? He sends us, or we can go on our own and bring God with us. We go to these people because hopefully they will learn enough about something related to the true God. They'll learn something that enough about something that it will have a positive impact on their lives, and that maybe over time a planted seed may grow. And they may overcome some of these issues. They may turn to the truth of God and build a new relationship with him. All right. Now, I'm saying this in the context of what I explained when I began this message. And that's to keep in mind that while these are struggles that you'll notice a lot of other people deal with, remember that we will deal with similar struggles ourselves. All right. And to embrace that, to recognize that, and to ask our God to help us to overcome similar issues that we will also be struggling with, just because that's, we're people just like other people as well. All right, for those of you who are using this for your small groups, I got a question for you that you might consider for a discussion. Why go to a church? I thought I'd ask that question. Why go to a church? All right? I mean, why go? Okay? And what I'm thinking when I wrote down this question, what I was thinking is first of all, even though you may have a wonderful group of believers in your life. All right, even though you may have a wonderful church community of some kind. All right, please don't use that as an excuse to not go out and find new people who you can tell these people about the Lord and about the new covenant. And going to another church is a reasonable way to approach that. Because in general, these people are usually there because they supposedly believe in Jesus, all right, or believe in God, or close enough. They might just be there because their spouse is there, and you should respect that to the degree that you're able, and understand that there will be people there that just don't have any interest in God at all, but you still may be able to build a relationship with them. But why go? Why go? All right, and what happens is that, and where this question usually comes up, is that people are usually thinking about this in the context of, I want to go there because I'm going to benefit from what's happening there. Why go there? Why am I here? Because I'm going to benefit. I really like the music program. I like the activities for my children. I'm here because it's a nice building. I like the food. Whatever it is. Or people are usually thinking, why go to a church? They're thinking, well, I go there. What am I going to get out of it? All right. But what I mean by this question is a little bit different. I mean, why go to this other place if in the sense that there are other reasons besides your own personal benefit, right? I mean, can you answer this question in the sense of, why would you go for someone else's benefit and not your own? All right? And that's the intent that I have in asking this question in this context. All right? And I will continue into John chapter 16, verse 4 in the next message. Thanks.